Okay, hi guys. I am back. I'm sorry it took me a little bit longer than I expected to do what I was wanting to do, so it ended up being more like an hour and a half and not an hour. But I did say around an hour, so hopefully that's okay. So once again, like with all my lives, we're gonna be reading What Once Was Mine. Yeah. So how is everyone's day going? Hopefully well. We ended on the chapter Rapunzel yesterday when I went live. So, yeah. Okay. Is everyone doing well? I normally wait 3 minutes to see if anyone's going to come on. If you don't, that's okay. Yeah. Just in case there are people still trying to come on. I normally wait around 3 minutes before I start reading. So, yeah. I talked about this last time, but just in case you guys are watching this video that did not watch the other one, lately I have been reading a lot. I'm reading the books Macbeth, of course What Once Was Mine. I'm also reading, Macbeth is the Shakespeare play. I said book. I'm also reading Monster of the Men and We Hunt the Flame. So, reading a lot of books right now. Yeah, last couple chapters I read last time really aggravated me because I didn't like what Mother Gothel was doing to Rapunzel, so hopefully that doesn't continue, because I really hope that Rapunzel gets to be happy. I really hope so. Yeah. I'm probably gonna, so I started on Rapunzel, and in my copy it's page 86, and it starts with the next day Rapunzel, so that's the first sentence. Yeah, I'm gonna start now because it's been 3 minutes, so let's get started with this. The next day Rapunzel sat on her favorite stool and looked out her window sadly. For the very first time, she actually looked the way she was often envisioned in the minds of fairy tale bedazzled writers: beautiful, wan, sad, delicate, yearning, stony, unmoving. It was very strange, because as we all know, the real Rapunzel was never still in her 300 square foot of freedom. She rested her head on her hands, arms crossed, on the cool ledge, and watched the world go by, very slowly, plant slowly. She was too sad to even put her thoughts into painting. She wasn't thinking about how she would never ever leave the tower, nor was she stewing in disappointment over not getting to see the lights. She also wasn't mourning how her relationship with her mother had become complicated and unpleasant, pecking over memories and decisions and trying to see where it had gone wrong. No, right then, she was still at that point of pure, undiluted sadness that prohibits all clear thoughts, distinct ideas, fully realized conclusions, like a waterfall that drowns out all sounds. It overpowered all the words in her head. Everything was just terrible. Never mind. You ever have those feelings where your body thinks you're gonna sneeze, but you end up not needing to sneeze? Oh. I'm sorry, guys. I really thought I was gonna sneeze there. And then something happened. She almost missed the first few seconds of it, convinced she was invented with something out of her own misery, or that maybe she had finally gone mad. A man ran into her clearing. Rapunzel hadn't pulled back from the window, frightened that he would see her. Apparently he was frightened as well. He kept looking around wildly behind himself. Flynn or Eugene. They call him Flynn in this, but I like to call him Eugene. So yeah. Behind himself and to the sides, as if something terrible had near and unseen. He was being followed, Rapunzel realized, or at least he was scared that someone might be following him. He stopped suddenly, spotting something. A tree? This page will not grow. There it goes, okay. A sick tree with a giant hole in it. Rapunzel frowned, not understanding. The man ran over to the tree and threw something into its hole. Rapunzel leaned forward dangerously, straining to see. It must have been something valuable. The man wasted no time. Having stashed whatever it was, he backed away. He stood until it looked around the whole area slowly and thoughtfully, probably memorizing his location. She took his moment of stillness to study him intently in an artist's perspective. All she could see was his body at an angle. At the top of his head, he had brown hair, and his arms, when they were out, they seemed young and muscular and lithe. She wished she could see his face. The way he moved made her think that he was probably handsome. She couldn't have said why, nor did she bother to differentiate think from hope. The man ran at the base of the tower and touched it curiously. Then he disappeared out of her view, circling around the wall. There might have been something scruffy noise, a strange wooden crunch. Rapunzel almost shrieked with frustration. What was he doing? But even the frustration was exciting. Nothing like this had happened in any of her 19 years. She had actually seen people a few times before this. A lost child, a confused shepherd, a dangerous-looking man with a sword and a bow. But they all immediately hurried away from her in the tower if they knew the dangers it contained the moment they set their eyes upon it. The man reappeared, running from the other way. He had gone all the way around the tower, and now missing his jacket. Strange. He stood, posed, hands on his hips, as if very pleased with himself, and then ran off, a slightly different direction from which he had entered the clearing. Rapunzel's heart raced. She gripped the window frame. The man might have left, possibly forever, but whatever he had stashed was still in the tree. Either he was going to return for it later, or someone else would. Maybe it would have been whoever was following him, maybe an enemy, maybe a co-conspirator. If she watched long enough, perhaps she would see the dynamite of the intriguing mystery. But Rapunzel was tired of watching and waiting. She thought about the hidden something in the tree and how she very, very much wanted to see what it was, to hold the most mystery in her hand, to solve a birthday present. It was her excitement. Her thoughts were a little muddled, It was her birthday, and she was sad and disappointed, and, well, this would go a long way of fixing things. Lunch that afternoon should have been a dreary affair. She and her mother sitting across from one another, not speaking, or rather, Gothel making fatuous and labored attempts at light conversation, while Rapunzel presented a very unrapunzel-y sad wall of silence. But now energy bubbled up from her hair to her toes and roised her face, and she almost danced in her seat with a string of hope. "Well, I'm so glad to see you are in a much better mood," Gothel said archly, somehow sounding like she didn't mean it at all. They were having the leftover chicken with some additions, mushrooms and herbs she had bought from the forest. Whatever else you could say about Gothel, she was a darn good cook with whatever she had in hand. Of course, I would hate to leave with you all gloomy and sulky like a ghost with bad digestion. Either way, I still need to leave, get things done at the family farm. All the usual, but it's certainly nicer this way. I still want to see the floating lights, Rapunzel said, both telling the plain truth and trying to draw out the argument as well as would have been natural. Gothel rolled her eyes. No. You're a danger to others and can't be trusted to keep yourself under control, she said, this matter of fact, almost sounding bored. Rapunzel kept her head low over her dish, trying not to giggle. She was not good at dissembling. She had never learned how. After dinner, the two cleaned up side by side, life as usual for them. Their movements were almost synchronized, and they had no need to talk. Although the washing was boring and endlessly repeated task, Rapunzel almost wished that the moment could have gone on a little longer. No talking meant no fights, and no end to the dishes meant that she wouldn't do what she was about to. And she did that thing when she left the tower. Their relationship would change forever. Rapunzel would have Rapunzel would have an experience, a secret from her mother, something new in 19 years. She would be different, and maybe it was about time, but it was also a little frightening. Gothel was humming to herself a little song about flowers gleaming and glowing. I love that. I can't sing it, or else I would, because I love that song. Because I don't want YouTube to get mad at me and not allow me to use lives anymore, but just flower gleam and glow, let your power shine, make the clock reverse, bring back what once was mine. Oh my goodness, I love that so much. Okay. It was one of Rapunzel's favorites. Her mother had been singing it ever since she was a baby. Yeah. If only you knew, Rapunzel. If only you know. When the plates and pots were clean and dried, Gothel packed her basket, and Rapunzel uncoiled her longest, thickest braid of hair. "Darling, you know I hate disappointing you," the older woman said, touching her daughter's cheek before climbing into the window. It's just the way things are. Rapunzel nodded, not trusting her mouth. She looked outside to the forest, to the dark trunk with the hole in it, which was growing blurry and obscured with the first licks of shadow. Is it safe for someone to travel by herself at night? She asked curiously. That's an odd question, Gothel said, assuming and suspicious at the same time. I'm not most women, Rapunzel. Fortunately for you and me. Oh, here, I almost forgot. Happy birthday, darling. I hate her so much. She reached into her cloak and pulled out something so surprising Rapunzel's jaw actually dropped. It was a bright red bracelet, one of the most cheerful things she'd ever seen. It didn't match any of her clothes or any other accessories. That was wonderful. It looked like fire and the tongue of her cat in one of her books. Or many. Or maybe it was a dog. And a really good sunset in autumn, happiest in a color. Oh, that's really good. Just showing how it's explaining how it's happiness and also looks like all these different things. Just that figurative language was so cool. There was even a cheery many-rayed sun on the clasp. It was one of Rapunzel's favorite symbols, one she painted again and again, everywhere in the tower. And her favorite color, too. Mother, it's beautiful, thank you. She threw her arms around Gothel and squeezed tight before the other woman could react. Maybe the woman didn't love Rapunzel's hugs. Maybe she was too strict. Maybe she was a little domineering. Maybe sometimes she said things she probably didn't mean, but it was obvious in her own broken way that Rapunzel's mother loved her. This bracelet was proof. She had remembered it. Was her birthday all along. I love you, Rapunzel, her mother said. I love you more, Rapunzel said back. I love you the most. Another one of the best lines in Tangled. I love that line so much. And with that, Gothel leapt down the rope of hair and disappeared into the night. The next chapter is also called Rapunzel. There's a lot of chapters in this just called Rapunzel. Kind of cool. Yeah, I'm liking the book so far a lot. We are almost to 100 pages, which means we're almost about a third way done, I think. Because isn't it? Oh no, never mind. We're almost about there's 490, so we're about a fifth way done. For some reason, I thought there were 300. I don't know. This book's gonna take us a while to go through. She bounced up and down while trying to predict time. Do math on entirely unknown quantities, wondering if there would happen the extremely rare but occasional occurrence. Rapunzel, I forgot something. How many times had Rapunzel similarly bounced with impatience, waiting and hoping for her mother to come back? But now, how long did it take Gothel to travel deep enough into the woods that she couldn't see or hear anything? How far was it? How many miles or minutes of walking? As a child, Rapunzel had constantly worried that something would happen, that she would need her mother to return for some reason, that Gothel wouldn't hear Rapunzel yelling. But now, what if she came back? What if she had one last word to say? What if? She weighed her worries on the one hand against the creeping shadows on the other. The sun was 40 minutes from setting, but the woods closest to the tower were already changing from the deep golden of late afternoon into the hazy blue of whatever you call the time just before evening. The hole on the hiding tree had gone from the brown to black to deep to Prussian blue. The leaves on the branches above it lost their gloss and gloomet. Finally, Rapunzel could stand it no more. She took her long braid, that one she had never coiled, back up again after Gothel had left, and tried the end around the omnier. It clung snugly to itself, and though she tugged it as hard as she could, it didn't give. Rapunzel, having no experience with normal hair beyond Gothel's slightly frizzy locks, wasn't at all surprised at this. Holding the slippery rope from her waist, keeping the slack wrapped around her arm, and leapt onto the window ledge. She balanced easily there, bare toes gripping the stone like a gecko. Rapunzel had never worn shoes. Once Gothel had given her a pair of dainty pink slippers, which were pretty to wear and fun to prance around and slip along with the immaculately waxed floors. But aside from that, she saw little use for the things. Slowly, and perhaps unmindful of how much her hair might have somehow supernatural ease, her work Rapunzel started down the tall side of the tower. It was a little dizzying at first, but then again, she had 19 years in a tower to grow immune to fear of heights and vertigo, and not falling or slipping for at least a minute or two. She began to bounce, just a little at first, testing her hair and her fear. Soon she pushed herself off the wall, swinging back and forth. Her long hair spiraled around the tower, around her legs, shot out into the air, and her head hung back like that of a fledgling unsure which way was up. "Whee!" she cried out, forgetting for a moment that Gothel might not be far enough away yet, or might return. She shut up immediately and concentrated on working her way down again, methodically but quickly. Eventually her toes touched the grass. Her plan was to land, run for the tree, root around in its hole, grab whatever was in there, and then race back to her tower before night fully fell, or 5 minutes passed, or Gothel returned with the man returned, or those chasing him returned, or Rapunzel accidentally killed anyone, or anything that might have ill luck to cross her path. But grass. She wiggled her toes. It was soft, springy, hard edges, tickly. Gosh, she cried in joy, looking at a little stalks poking up between her footy divots. She jumped up and down. She felt the earth pushing back. It was so different from stone or wood, soft but hard, warming quickly under her feet, sticking to her feet. She ran forward just a little bit to see how it felt. It was much nicer than running in the tower, and she paused, realizing something. She had never run more than 7 Rapunzel lengths in a row, which was the longest stretch of straight floor she had when all the furniture was moved out of the way for the game day obstacle course. She couldn't run much faster now, and her hair, tethered to the Ormanier, back to the tower. But it hadn't been tethered, and she could run forever. "What's that? I'd never seen that flower before," she cried, forgetting her train of thought. She bent over the blossom, a tiny little white star-shaped thing and no larger than the tip of her pinky. There were a few scattered here and there, but they didn't grow in masses like bluets or brambles, so there was no way she could have seen it from her window. She poked it. Yellow pollen, it got on her fingertips. Suddenly she grew frightened. What if she killed it? Rapunzel jumped up off the ground. Her second realization far more frightening and profound than the first. Everything outside was alive. She was standing on living grass and roofed by living trees, bugs that flapped past her, completely unaware of her deadliness. One landed on her. A bird chirped in a tree. A leaf fell from the sky. The threads of mushrooms wound under through the grass and into her heart of the forest, any and all of which could be killed by her without a moment's thought. If she touched a plant and it died, would the bugs on it die? Would the fungus intertwined with its roots? But nothing was dying. Not right then, anyway. Mostly everything was ignoring her. "Don't you think of the chicken? Don't you think of the chicken?" she told herself, trying not to think of whatever it was she thought of when she had to kill things. Okay, I was just seeing how many pages were left in this chapter. There's 8, so we might actually get to a 3rd chapter today. Cool. A breeze blew and a large bumblebee into her smack, but despite her anxiety from harming the thing, she giggled at the shot itself and flew off again, slowly gaining speed as it recovered. It was fuzzy and yellow with enormous eyes and tiny antennae, and looked like if it were less buzzy, it might have been friends with her for a bit. It had run into one of the thick braids coiling around her shoulders, even while she was thinking about killing the chicken. Cautiously, she wrapped the tendril of hair around her finger, and walked up to the tree and poked it. Ow! The tree's skin was harder than she expected. Never having poked a tree before, she supposed, sucking on her injected finger as if it was a bent-back nail. That was why wood was hard. But the tree endured her hair and even the beginning of the death's thought, and didn't die. Just like she was able to stroke the chicken before having to kill it, or how she cared for her houseplants. No one was affiliated with her magic care without her actively willing it. I just have to not get angry or scared or hurt, she said. I can be careful and cautious. She stood very still, drilling that order in her soul. She spun around in joy, arms out in clean, fresh breeze, inhaling pollen, the beauty, and possibly one of the 2 small gnats. Whee! not accidentally killing anything meant so many wonderful things. She would not keep this a secret. She would tell her mother. She would tell Gothel all about her trip down to the outside world and how nothing at all happened. She hadn't killed anyone or anything. She had petted a lizard, actually, and she was doing it right then, before she could stop herself. Even as she was thinking these things, she knew it was a lizard from the pictures in the fairy tale books. Long and lithe and dry and scaly, but the legs unlike a snake. Lizards were turned into handsome footmen in Cinderella, probably a skink of some kind. The reptile bore her touch with the vaguest patience of cold-blooded creature that liked to be warm and didn't smell anything dangerous like a fox or a hawk. Its experience with humans and minimal to none. Rapunzel, of course, assumed and not running away meant it was potential wilderness friend. I'm not going to kill you. Is this gonna be Pascal? Is he gonna be a lizard instead of a chameleon? That'd make me so happy. Okay, if this is Pascal, I'm gonna love it. You adorable, soft-skinned thing. You're perfect. She would tell her mother that she had done this to show her mother the lizard, and then it was the only matter of convincing her to take her to the floating lights. She wasn't a danger. Yep, it's Pascal. Isn't that right, Pascal? I'm going to call you Pascal. Yes, okay. And with that, she plucked the lizard diffidently up and to put him on her shoulder. Dizzy and now petrified, he gripped tightly to her dress and stayed put. With this daring new plan in mind, and the floating lights practically in her reach, Rapunzel nearly forgot the reason she had left the tower in the first place. She shook her head with her own silliness and ran over to the tree with the hole and stuck her hand in, which only further demonstrated how little she really knew about the natural world and the world outside her tower. Aha! Her fingertips brushed the smooth surface and well-worn leather, but she couldn't quite get a grip on it. No matter. She undid a smaller coil of her hair that did, but carefully wound in the shape of a rune that was supposed to ward off evil. She retied it into a looping knot and danced it through the dark space, pulling hard whenever it hit something likely, just like fishing, which she had read about. Eventually the loop tightened around something and she was able to pull it up. Again, none of this seemed strange to Rapunzel, who had only ever known her own hair. The leather satchel, hastily closed and beautifully worn, barely containing whatever was inside it, and she would run back to her tower to hoist herself up and picking if possible, thereby avoiding anyone returning for the bag and accidentally killing anyone, or the extremely awkward scene that would occur should her mother come back early for some reason, except her hands were already opening the satchel. Even when she was deciding all this. No, Rapunzel slammed the bag shut and yelled at her hands. Come on, you guys. Can't you wait 5 minutes? She stomped back over to the tower wall, putting a look of stern disappointment on her face. She carefully, mindfully wrapped the giant rope of her hair around her waist and began the more difficult trip back up. It crossed her mind for the briefest moment that perhaps Gothel didn't know that she was complaining about when she said the climb was hard. Rapunzel in her hair did not almost all of the work pulling her. She painstakingly and slowed haul herself along, biting her lip and curling her tongue as the thicker bits, at one point carefully maneuvering around a nest that was tucked into some ivy, and then around the particularly slippery stone in shiny cloud glass. None of her 37 books was about geology. When Rapunzel finally thumbed in through the window, she was protective hand on Pascal, so he wouldn't fall to the floor. When Rapunzel finally thumbed in through... Oh, I already read that sentence. Sorry. She leapt to her feet again, and then, unsure why, spun around to look out the window again. Night was falling for real now. Everything was much darker, cloaked in blue. It had not been there just a few minutes ago, and she was out in the green grass and poking the tray. The whole scene looked like a painting framed by the pointy-topped window. Rapunzel felt a strange quietness come over her that she had never experienced before, something like wonder but softer. She had been out there, down there. It was real and visceral and somehow normal that she was in the grass, and now it looked like a picture, delicate, magical, removed. She wasn't sure what it all meant. The secret part of her knew. A whisper. Change. Like the pause before the thunderstorm, or the hours before her monthly blood began. She shook her head, clearing things from it she didn't understand or want to. All right, she declared. And now my birthday mystery. She opened the satchel. And honestly, fate couldn't have provided a better prize at the end of the scavenger hunt. She pulled out a beautiful, sparkling crown. Her large green eyes grew even larger despite the hour and lack of sunlight. Its jewels still managed to shimmer and twinkle in the magical, expensive way. Rapunzel might not have had much experience with royal gems or any kind of precious stone, but it was very clear that these were those. The thing was straight out of a fairy tale, what a princess would be wearing if she turned back from a swan. The giant diamonds were even shaped like swan eggs. Under each of the round pink ruby, and threading between them in a pretty strand of perfectly round pearls, she turned over her hands, tracing the tiny and accurately wound gold wire that held it all together. And there was a small flat patch of smooth metal. What an artist's mark and a multi-rayed sun symbol, the same one on her bracelet clasp, the same one she constantly painted and dreamed of, and one that meant life and happiness and energy in the personal vocabulary of Rapunzel's soul. Why? She looked at her bracelet. Even an untrained eye was obvious the two pieces of jewelry had not been made by the same person, maybe not even the same studio. For one crazy moment, she imagined that it was all connected, that it really was some sort of magical 19th birthday mystery scavenger hunt. What if Gothel arranged everything? The man, the crown, the bracelet was a hint. An other explanation was there, and if so, what if she wanted Rapunzel to sneak out? Rapunzel reluctantly brushed the thought aside, feeling both silly and disappointed at the same time. Her mother most definitely did not want her to leave the tower, ever. She had made that abundantly clear, and she was definitely not the sort of person who hired actors for extravagant birthday surprise. Rapunzel carefully unpinned the largest coils of her hair, piled atop of her head, and she put the crown and turned to look in the mirror. She didn't want to think it, but she wasn't the kind of person that the crown fit her perfectly. The colors in the stones were accentuated, and she, in her own coloring, in the other way around, she looked like a princess with a lizard on her shoulder. "Oh, Pascal," she cried, ripping the crown off her and putting a hand to him. "I'll bet you're starving or dehydrated. I'm being selfish here. Let's take care of you." The crown went back into the satchel. The lizard got some leftover chicken dangling from the end of a stick that made it look alive, and Rapunzel returned to her nightmare routines. Her nighttime routines, despite a head filled with crowns, lizards, mysteries, and boys, and the best birthday ever. Okay, I'm gonna end it here. I would normally have ended up reading an extra paragraph because it's only been 40 minutes, but I have some other stuff I better get done, so I'm gonna end it here. Thank you guys for watching this video. I hope you're having a wonderful day. I love you 3000, and please stay safe. Bye guys.